They sit at the number 16 pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and there's a growing consensus from some.
AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams.
Off on Monday in observance of the MLK holiday. Chuck Smith on assignment this past. Very fun show coming up. Look forward to hearing from a lot of commenters as well as the Falcons get ready for free agency in the NFL draft. A very busy time on the NFL calendar.
It really is, and I've had a chance to be a free agent, and you're going to make a lot of money, but negotiate a contract and put you in position to make a lot of money.
He's currently set the number 16 pick in the first round anyway. The experts there are Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com. Jeremiah said he released his mock draft back near the beginning of the Tulane, a consistently productive edge rusher. Don't Falcon fans know that's been true? Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com. How about Mel Kiper on that same subject? A chance to see what Kiper said about that at Dan Quinn's 4-3 defense, and I think he could be a dominant interior presence on passing downs. Falcons 28 sacks this season, tied for second fewest in the league, and Epinesa would help. That's Mel Kiper from ESPN. So, Chuck, we are squarely in your wheelhouse on this because you evaluate pass rushers. You kind of know the Falcons' need here at this position. I will say, based on the description you just got there from Daniel Jeremiah and the description you get from Mel Kiper, that doesn't excite me about AJ Epinesa. When I think about the kind of like fast, quickie, twitch muscles that make you a successful pass rusher in the NFL, the Iowa Hawkeye is not typically the place that I go to get that athleticism, just typically. And I'm not painting with a broad brush, but that's just kind of a fact. Epinesa may go and light the world on fire, but him at 16 for the Falcons, one way or another, that does not do a lot to excite me.
Well, when I hear edge and I hear he's a good fit for playing defensive tackle when he on third downs, that already tells me he's not a true speed rush edge guy. Because you don't put your speed, your burners inside to play defensive tackle. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So right now, when you look at what these guys are saying, at that 16, they need an edge guy. They don't need a hybrid, a guy who can play tackle on third downs, because I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to hear he's a third down pass rusher. And when you listen to, who's that first guy, what did he say?
Daniel Jeremiah,
Daniel Jeremiah.
Not the highest ceiling in the world.
That's just a solid player.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking to find greatness at this point, because think about what the Falcons have been trying to do for a long time. Since John Abraham, really, would you say? Since John Abraham left to find a true edge guy. And that's the biggest problem, and that's the biggest challenge the Falcons have had with Vic Beasley. Can't really, he hasn't developed like you thought. Then you got Tack McKinley. You clearly can't, right now, I wouldn't pin Tack in. You can't really count on him right now because he's injured. I hate when he said he's an 8-10 sacker. I need to hear he's a double-digit sack guy at 16. I'm not big on hearing that tweener type pass rusher.
Well, I think you touched on something a moment ago that I think is really, really important, which is that, if you're Mel Kiper and you're saying, hey, this is a guy that you can kind of kick inside on pass rushing situations, that's not what elite pass rushers do. There are good interior pass rushers, but your game record at that position is kind of coming around the edge, coming around the outside. And obviously, I don't discount the fact this is a huge need for Atlanta, and I am not going to relitigate the whole idea of how much better things would be if Atlanta was picking 6 spots, up in the draft. I'm not going to go back and do all that again. But when I think about Atlanta's need for a dominant pass rusher, Epinesa doesn't feel like that. No. He just feels to me like the best available at this particular position.
Right, and I agree with you on that. And that's what it sounds like to me, just trying to fill a need. And sometimes you gotta find the right fit. And to me, I just don't want the tweener guy, because let me tell you another part of this. Okay, you put this guy in at defensive tackle. Where are you going to put Grady? Is Grady going to become the primary nose guy? So now Grady is that guy at the 3 technique. Grady's the primary pass rusher. Now, if you put this guy inside, to me it says, wow, he's not truly the guy we think on the edge. Because look, the most coveted pass rush, here's the most coveted pass rusher quality in the league is speed off the edge. Vic Beasley has that, but then you got to be what? You got to have enough skill to develop other moves. So I'm just not feeling that. But again, I will say this. There are guys come out of the Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC that are pass rushers now. And just because you're in the SEC don't mean you're better than anyone from the Big 10. You understand what I'm saying?
I do understand.
But I can tell you this. One thing that Dan Quinn covets is guys that can get upfield fast. One thing I covet is guys who can use moves. So I love the speed. We've learned from that, but speed don't guarantee you to have a good pass rush.
Let me get a couple comments here. Jason Dillard says that Mel Kiper's been wrong on many occasions, and obviously anyone who gives this many opinions on the same subject for year after year after year, we're talking before the show started. He's been doing this for decades. I mean, I remember him arguing with Was it Bill Polian
Yeah,
over
Bill
like
Polian.
Trent
Yep.
Dilfer's draft? I mean, like, this is how long he's been doing this, so much so that he was, arguing about Trent Dilfer coming into the National Football League. So this guy's been doing it for a while. The point here is, when you do it as long as he's going to do it, really, even you and me sitting here, we're going to give a million opinions. Some are going to be right, some are going to be wrong, but it is fair to say that neither Kiper nor Jeremiah, and I actually think that Jeremiah is probably one of the better guys in the business. When it comes to these guys, no one's going to be 100% accurate on where guys are going to land, and the evaluation of these players, you're just as likely to be right as to be wrong about that.
You're right. Now, I think we give them way more credit than they deserve. Because let me just take you in right now. Let me just take you in the Atlanta Falcons, where the big boys are sitting at the table, right? Thomas Dimitroff, Arthur, Rich McKay, Dan Quinn. I can promise you this right now. The way they work, they're not leaking out information to Daniel Jeremiah. Mel Kiper is not getting a call from Thomas Dimitroff saying, "Hey, man, I think we're going to look at Espinoza." That don't happen. This stuff is top secret. And then, look, people get fired for leaking stuff out. So those guys, you rarely hear this. This is what you rarely hear from those guys, unidentified sources.
Right.
They just flat out coming up. This is their opinion.
Yeah.
You never hear that. So from the standpoint of what they're saying, man, things are going to change. It's like rolling dice for you to try to understand who they're going to get. Because look at some of the guys the Falcons have gotten over the years. You were surprised.
That's
you
right.
were surprised. You know what I mean? So it's funny how people give these guys so much credit, but it's fun. It's content. Those guys those guys give great content online. So it's wow, really cool.
Well, it's the thing of like, doing mock drafts is a hard thing to do, but there's obviously an insatiable appetite to do them. You know what I'm saying? Because even if the guy ends up being wrong, we all just we're all the same way. It's like you see one of these things, ESPN.com or NFL.com, somewhere like that. You click on the thing, AJC.com kind of has their own version of this kind of stuff. You click on the thing, you want to see who people are saying the Falcons are going to get, and you're either going to do one of two things. You're going to say, yeah, I'd like it if Atlanta got him, or you're going to say, man, that's crazy. There's no way that's what Atlanta's going to do. But we still kind of want to see what these guys say.
I like it too. Now, let me tell you this. I like it when I see my guys in there. I train pass rushers. If you didn't know, I'm a pass rush trainer. So a lot of my guys are preparing for the NFL draft. I love it when I see my guys. Now, I'm reposting, but then I hate it when one of my first round guys in the second round. It's funny. But I look at them, but I rarely look at them, when I'm looking at it from the Falcons standpoint. I'm more interested in the analysis. I like the analysis breakdowns where they say the pros, the cons, the strengths. You know what I mean? Some of those guys. And there are a lot of general managers now that are online that have become somewhat, scouts, so to speak. And I like reading their breakdown. So, to me, it's pretty interesting.
All right, so let's talk for a minute about what Atlanta might do other than A.J. Epinesa. We're getting some good comments on that, including Kay Green watching us today on YouTube, who says, if we move on from Devondre Campbell, and we'll have more on that coming out in a moment, he says, what are the odds we take a look at a draft prospect like Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson? And, Simmons may be somewhere in that kind of like sort of top 20 range. Very good year, very good career at Clemson. I think really exceeded his recruiting profile for the most part there in Brent Venables' defense. And I guess it sort of opens the question up of, you can give me a specific evaluation of Simmons if you want to, but how willing would you be to consider a position other than pass rusher at that number 16 pick?
Well, I would definitely be interested in Simmons because he is one of the best pressure blitzers I saw off the ball all year. He can cover tight end. So if you let Devondre go, remember, now you got a gigantic hybrid safety linebacker / he's super fast. Now you got a guy that can cover tight ends. But what I noticed best about him in the playoffs, that he could move and he was a great blitzer. He was able to.
He's a good player, yeah.
I mean, he could blitz really well. So I ain't got somebody like that at 16. I wouldn't have a problem with because he brings that speed, he can cover, and I like him because he got that dog in him.
And frankly, I'm not trying to push Devondre Campbell out the door, but I mean, there are certain things like, say, pass coverage when you call him someone to do that. I could see Simmons being better at that than just based on what I saw from him in Clemson. I could see him being better than that and what Devondre Campbell's going to prove to be for Atlanta.
Yeah, and you know what? And I can say Devondre Campbell, in all fairness to Devondre, look at the rest of the team. Okay, no pass rush. Hard for me to cover tight end down the field. So, but I think Devondre has value. I would love for him to sign Devondre back, but to me, when I'm looking at what the Falcons are doing, I'm looking for the best available defensive lineman. Then I'm going linebacker.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to tell you this. I would have no problem with them drafting a center.
Okay.
I'd have no problem.
Okay.
People always say, wow, we need this. And remember, Alex Mack's going to probably be out of here. But to me, go for a guard. To me, if I can't fill a need, I want the best available.
Yeah.
Receiver? No. Quarterback? No. I mean, unless you got two of there. Look, my new thing now at 16, And Tua's not going to be there.
Right.
They're already. I mean, most things I've seen, like top 5?
Yeah, I think he's probably top 5.
All right. So, but 16, is there a running back?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Okay. So
is
now,
there a running back?
So now you're getting to somewhere I wanted to go because Telvin Phelps says, "Can we please let Devontae Freeman go? We don't even have to get Swift. There's still better back than Freeman." So obviously DeAndre Swift's one of those guys. For me, I thought it was bad news for Atlanta. Now, I'm obviously doing all this in my head. Who's to know how real any of this is? Mm-hmm. But Travis Etienne from Clemson announced he's returning to school for senior season.
He did?
Yeah, he's going back to Clemson.
You stop. See, I didn't know that. I'm just finding this out now.
Yeah, so Etienne's going back to Clemson.
Oh, no.
So that's a guy that I would have thought, hey, Atlanta's got 2 second-round picks. Is there a chance a guy like Etienne falls? Well, now he's not there anymore. I do think Atlanta needs an upgrade at running back. So now for Atlanta.
Real quick, is there a running back, though, worthy of 16? Is it J.K. Dobbins?
What about DeAndre Swift? Would you take DeAndre Swift at 16? And now you say, well, I'm a Georgia fan. That's what I want them to do.
No.
Swift is projected to potentially go that high.
No. I'm not saying because you're a Georgia fan. The guy's got first-round talent. Yeah. He's proven that. Etienne is better than Swift.
Right. I really don't know why. I don't know that Etienne's better, but I think that Etienne is a very, very, very interesting prospect. Okay. I don't know why he's going back to school.
But what I have seen from Etienne, he can catch. Mm-hmm. And this burst out, I don't know. But look,
in the playoff game against Ohio State, I thought he was potentially the most dynamic player on a field that included Jeffrey Okudah and included Chase Young. I thought that Etienne at times looked like the most dynamic player on that field.
Right. Okay, let me take something back. I cannot say that he's better than Swift. That's not a good statement. But from what I'm seeing from the burst, the running downhill, everything I've seen, he reminds me of Jacobs, the rookie of the year out of Oakland. You know what I mean? Swift is more of a dancer. I want this downhill thumper like right now, not quite like Henry from the Titans.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, right.
But Swift is a little more, a little shaky and bakey.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of a sideways.
Look, if I had the opportunity between J.K. Dobbins, Swift, and Etienne, I'm going Etienne. I like thought Etienne. He was worthy of 16.
I liked him a lot, especially even maybe for Atlanta. But now he's not there, so you think about what's left. If you try to wait in the second round on DeAndre Swift, I think there's a really good chance you miss out on him. That's obviously just my best guess projection. So if you want him, you got to take him at 16. Now, I'll be very clear about something. I don't like drafting running backs in the first round for this NFL because I think you can, as you mentioned, Jacobs of the Raiders is an example of this. You can get guys later on and have those guys, kind of work out and be successful. This has become a league that values in terms of spending a bunch of money, spending a bunch of draft capital. This league values running backs less than it used to. But for Atlanta, here's the one reason why I would consider doing something different. You got Julio Jones, you got Matt Ryan. I'm going to be a broken record on this. They are in the prime of their career. Why not say for those last couple of years of that prime for them, expensive years, by the way, huge cap number for Ryan this year, Julio Jones just got a big extension. Why not say we're going to make a run at being the best offense in the NFL? Go back to 2016, Atlanta averaged 34 points a game. You don't have Kyle Shanahan calling you plays anymore. Hard to get back to that point. But if you re-sign Austin Hooper, even though some teams in the same situation might not do it, if you draft running back, best available at that spot at 16, all of a sudden you make sure you keep one of your playmakers and you fill what has been your biggest need. You got to convince Dirk Cutter to call running plays. That hasn't always been a strength of his. You make a run in the twilight of Ryan and Julio's career together. You make a run at being the best offense in the NFC, NFL again. You make a run towards that 30-point-a-game number again. You do everything you can and say, Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris, coach them up on defense. We're using our resources to rebuild and fully build this offense.
Okay, well, if they're going to do that, I love some Swift. I'm going with J.K. Dobbins.
Okay.
So my thing is I want that dude that can come downhill. In the NFL, the lateral side-to-side guys, to me, I just, it's not as much successful as the guys that are coming downhill. But
now we saw at Georgia that DeAndre Swift can run between the tackles because goodness knows that's the only place that Georgia called this past year.
But he never came downhill and was like,
he's not Derrick Henry. Yeah, he's not Derrick Henry.
But what I will say about Swift, what I do believe he'll become, a great running back out of the backfield. Yeah. And when I think of him, I think of LaShawn McCoy. Mm-hmm. He reminds me of a young, shady McCoy, which is a guy who, he'll get on the Hall of Fame ballot one day, but he's not going to get in. But Falcons, I wouldn't have a problem with that because you're in the prime of your peak when you got guys that can, you want to go for a Super Bowl. And to me, you get a guy that can come out of the backfield, make catches. Because think of what Coleman did for the Falcons during the Super Bowl year, right? Mm-hmm. During those years, he was catching balls out of the backfield. Kyle Shanahan was rocking and rolling, a lot like he's doing in San Fran.
Yeah, right.
But I understand what you're saying. I ain't got a problem with that.
So one more point on this, and I'm going to take a bunch of comments on draft stuff, and we'll just kind of figure out what people are thinking. You mentioned defensive line. Another reason why I'm kind of throwing my hands up and say, well, maybe you just take a flyer on the best running back available, is when Jesse Tuggle was here for you this past Friday.
Hammer.
Obviously, no doubt, we love having him in here. Obviously, we talked about his son, Grady Jarrett, and I asked him at the time, I said, how do you think Grady would feel about lining up a big, gigantic, kind of space-eating defensive tackle like Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina? How do you think Grady would like lining up with somebody like that? And he said, I think that'd be great for Grady. The problem with Kinlaw is, I know the Falcons had a chance to speak to him a little bit at the Senior Bowl. Supposedly, he went to Mobile and really performed really well, so much so that he's going to shut it down after that. I don't think Javon Kinlaw is available when the Falcons pick at 16.
I don't either.
So you may be left to kind of think about another need because I don't think there's really anybody. If you're talking about really good interior defensive linemen, you're talking about Derek Brown, you're talking about Javon Kinlaw. I don't think either one of them are available at 16, and so you're kind of left to kind of think about what you want to do besides that because those game-changing defensive tackles are just probably not going to be there.
Yeah, and I think Kinlaw has great size, great potential, but right now he's raw. And to me, a guy like that, he's had really 1 year. He had one big breakout game. He had some good games last year, but to me, he's really raw. Derek Brown, surefire. But at 16, he's not going to be there, but I would have no problem with him because he's not necessarily a two-gapper. He's a guy that can get upfield and get explosive and be very disruptive. And I thought that'd be a nice fit next to Grady, but me personally, I wouldn't want Kinlaw.
Okay, so it's AJC, Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great. It's just 96 calories. Now, there's a lot to get to when it comes to Falcons and free agency and maybe at least a little bit of a hint of a Falcons trade. That's been popular for Thomas Dimitroff to do during his Falcons career. We're going to get to all that coming up. Let me let y'all talk here for a minute. Jew Talk Sports on YouTube says, how about Zach Moss, the running back out of Utah? Moss has been banged up a little bit, though, right? Injured a little bit. I mean, that's not necessarily a reason not to take him, but at least something to think about there. Anthony Wright says that Swift has also been injury prone. That was more early in his career than kind of later on. Anthony also mentions Jonathan Taylor, the running back out of Wisconsin. He says he can run, he can catch, he can block.
I like him.
I think that's a potential second-round pick you could make. The problem is Wisconsin just uses these backs so much. I mean, Taylor's been used a lot there, way more so than talk about a guy like Swift at Georgia. Taylor's just been used a lot more.
Yeah, he's been used a lot more, but he's the kind of back that I just think will thrive in the NFL. I just struggle with the jitterbacks. The jitterbugs. To me, that's what kind of Swift has become.
And that's not what Taylor is. Taylor is a little bit more of a downhill guy.
No, I love Taylor. No, I love Taylor. And I don't know how many hits he's taken, but they'll evaluate all that. Yeah. But let me tell you guys what I would do in the first round. I'm telling you, I'm going with my best available that fits a need, right? And meaning the best available at that need, whether it's a running back, I don't care. But listen, so what I do in the second round, there are going to be so many big guys around. I already know that one of the big guys that would fit in perfect, who's a big run stuffer, because as much as we talk about pass rush, the Falcons struggle to stop the run, right? The Falcons have struggled to stop the run last year also.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm going to tell you a guy that a guy might like to see here. There's a guy like Aleki Fotu, kid from Utah, I don't know, about 340 pounds. Just someone he can get upfield, he can stop the run, because we don't want to go and get a smaller upfield guy. I still think we need some beef in there. I want to see some dudes when the Falcons walk out there, they just big and nasty, just like, oh, that's my team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, bring that physicality
Yeah, because when you
back.
think of what you get in I was going to say Chris Jones from Mississippi State. Chris Jones at Kansas City, he came out as he was a two-gapper. People thought, he's basically a 3-4 guy. Man, you watch Chris Jones, he's super disruptive. He is massive. I want to see some of them big old suckers, man, on the field, just giant like the Saints D-line. I mean, just big guys, and Grady's going to be who he is.
Yeah.
But we need some big thumpers, some bulk
how much
up
better
there.
would Grady be with that beef
with
next
Fletcher
to him?
Cox? You know what I mean? I can just, you know what I'm saying? All these guys, we can go down the
Speaking
list.
of running backs, Dexter Vlash on YouTube mentions Kenneth Murray, the running back out of Oklahoma. So a lot of names to kind of consider here. Chris Slim White says, I don't want a Wisconsin running back. They don't work in the NFL. Mike Little says, I think the Falcons definitely need to pick up some offensive linemen to give Ryan more time to pass. We've got a good team, but need more time to throw the ball to our key receivers, be able to run more, need some corners too. So we can kind of go round and round about this. And once again, this is going to be one of those things where I'm kind of a broken record on. I realize Atlanta still, to my mind, and I think most of you as well, has a huge need at left guard. But just given the fact that you took 2 offensive linemen in the first round last year, I don't know how much capital and resources you can put towards offensive linemen, either in free agency or in the upper end of the draft this year. I think you've got to hope that what you did at right guard last year with Lindstrom, that it works this year. Him healthy and playing and works. And the experience that you gave McGarry at right tackle, I think you got to hope that works. You mentioned the idea of moving on from Alex Mack. You're going to have to save some money somewhere. But just given the fact that you've got so many unknowns right now along your offensive line, to kind of add another unknown to that list, because drafting replacement for Alex Mack makes that a position of unknown. I think you've got to kind of hope that the offensive line that you have kind of gels better in 2020. That's why personally I would not move on from Mack. But at the same time, I don't think you can go really high in the draft with, say, a possible left guard, just because I think you've done a lot on the offensive line in recent years. At a certain point in time, you just got to hope all this kind of works together.
And I hear you, man. I understand what you're saying. But the one thing about the center position, if I'm gonna get a guy and pencil him in, it's going to be a center. Centers, they snap the ball and they're a help. The biggest thing about them is learning how to make the calls and working being synchronized with the quarterback. Centers help. They rarely ever get one-on-ones. They rarely ever, they're help. They help the guards. They help, the tackles and stuff with double teams. I just think if the Falcons were to do that, I think part of our identity, we throw the ball around. You're talking about getting a running back.
Yeah.
I would have no problem with getting, what is the LSU kid? The center's supposed to be really good.
Yeah, the LSU guy is one I was thinking about for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so remember now, think of what the Tennessee Titans just did. Think of some of these teams that are able to run, and they're also able to throw. Now, with the exception of Kansas City, they run pretty good. But look at Frisco. They run the ball. So there is something to be said about having a dominant offensive line. Frisco's got a dominant offensive line. Look, the Baltimore Ravens, dominant offensive line. These are teams that are in the contention for winning Super Bowl. So I wouldn't have no problem with the Falcons building that offensive line up and, figuring out on defense.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Lloyd Cushenberry is the center from LSU who's trying to he's at the Senior Bowl right now, in fact. All right, a couple more comments and we're going to move on, because I know a lot of folks want to talk about free agency and stuff like that. Tony Tran says, defense or running backs, you have to go with the SEC players. They have proven to be the best prospects. So listen, you're speaking my language if you say that. I think that in Atlanta, this is such a college football town, that anytime the Falcons draft an SEC name, or really like a Clemson name, is kind of the same way. These guys that we've watched on television, those of us who are big college football fans, most of the people who are watching us right now are watching a ton of college football. Falcons fans are always going to be happy with that. You take, some examples better than others, but you bring a Beasley or a Jarrett out of Clemson, people are like, I saw that guy play on TV. I'm happy with that pick. You kind of go Iowa with your pick. Listen, this is going to sound, kind of whatever, but for a lot of people around here, they don't like pass rusher from Iowa as well as they like running back from Georgia. It's just a fact. And there are a lot of UGA fans who I think would be thrilled, if Atlanta, did go the direction of a DeAndre Swift, or in a kind of a perfect world if a Kinlaw was available, or something along those lines. The average Falcons fan who's watching a lot of SEC football on Saturdays, he'd be pretty happy with that, I think.
And I would too. I'm biased SEC, and when you look at the draft, the SEC is littered with pass rushers, defensive linemen. Even the ACC, I kind of lump in there, kind of in the region. The Florida States, the Clemson.
As long as it's a Florida State or a Clemson, one of those teams like that, even they're going to get a free pass. Back in the day, and I don't think Atlanta's drafting too many more Virginia Tech players now, but back when Atlanta was taking Virginia Tech guys, that's a school we're seeing on TV a pretty good bit. For a big college football town like Atlanta, they're like, that guy can play here because we saw him play a high level of competition in college. Yeah, and the guy, I'll tell you, throw out a name real quick for our viewers, Trayvon Hill. He's a kid that used to be at Virginia Tech, played at Miami. He's a smaller defensive end. He's tall. He's got weight to put on. He's about 6'3", somewhere around 235. Mm-hmm. He's killing at the Senior Bowl. He's a raw, true speed rusher. That's good to hear.
He can hit the corner. He's got inside moves. But he's one of those guys, he'll probably be there in the third round. He's not a first or second round pick. He'll be in the third round, maybe even the fourth round, but he's one of those guys right now, he instantly helps your pass rush. Listen, there are a lot of guys out there now. I mean, listen, the guys we're talking about, Ken Law, we're talking about, a lot of other guys, but there's some guys out there, Terrell Lewis, what I'm saying? Let me tell you another one. Listen, we're talking about, again, I love me some Devondre, but if he does get replaced, I'm getting Anthony Jennings from Alabama.
Okay.
Perfect position. He's a blitzer. He's a guy who can cover tight ends. So I'm just saying there's so many different names out there. Robert Windsor, big 6'6", D-tackle out of Penn State. You know what I'm saying? That's long. I mean, there's so many guys out there that won't be on first or second or third round, but that I know for a fact they can help an NFL team, and they will be on rosters.
All right, let's do this here. Somebody mentioned in our comment section a moment ago, what about trading up for a Derrick Brown? What about trading up for a Javon Kinlaw, if that's what it takes to get a guy like that? This did come up a little bit at the Senior Bowl this week. In fact, Matt Miller, who's known as NFL Draft Scout on Twitter from Bleacher Report, I guess had a chance to talk to Thomas Dimitroff, and the subject came up of, and this is Matt Miller's tweet, I'm going to read it as he's written it. Falcons GM Thomas Dimitroff just told us they pick at 16, quote, for now. Now, obviously, those two words get a lot of attention, and it's also dangerous of maybe reading too much into that from Dimitroff, but Atlanta has been very keen on trading up in the Dimitroff era. In this particular case, given the fact that I think Atlanta ought to be considering itself in a win-now mode, you've got a coach who has to prove himself, you've got a GM who needs to prove himself, you've got veterans near the end of their career. I think you need as many holes plugged with draft picks as you can, packaging a number of those to move up. I just think Atlanta's done way too much of that. One of the reasons why Atlanta, I think's roster turned out to be a little thinner this year than some people thought it probably would is I think Atlanta spent too much time trading up in the past. They've given up too much draft capital to do so. So I think, speaking on behalf of Falcons fans here for a moment, when he says, yeah, we're at 16 for now, I think if you're a Falcons fan, you ought to hope he doesn't mean we're looking to trade up again, because that's the wrong thing, I think, for most NFL teams in any situation. I think for Atlanta right now, that's definitely the wrong mindset.
See, I disagree a little bit. And the reason why, something we talked about earlier, and you mentioned about what? We got to get a running back. We want to win a Super Bowl now. Guys are in their prime, right? So to me, when you look at this draft, it's perfect to move up. And let's just talk about Derrick Brown, because I would love for the Falcons to do this. Remember, it could be 4 quarterbacks going to the top 10. There could be 3, 4 quarterbacks, and minimum is probably going to be 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10. Derrick Brown's not going to go probably in the top 5. Now, when you look at the quarterbacks and look at this opportunity, you already kind of can slot where Derrick's going to be. Now, the Falcons, I'd rather salvage some of these years coming up to win a Super Bowl. If you get one Super Bowl in 10, 15 years, you've done a heck of a job in this organization. See, the Patriots have raised the bar to where we don't, it's getting unrealistic. Yeah. But the Falcons get a Super Bowl, and the roster's a little messed up for 5, 6, 7 years. So I'm doing whatever I can. And listen, remember the coaches you got. And if I'm them, I'm going all in. So I really believe the Falcons are prime, and I really believe that this roster can win a Super Bowl. It's time to go all in, do what you got to do. I wouldn't have a problem with them trading up and getting rid of picks in the back. Third, I'm good. Okay. Second round picks. If it can be Derrick Brown or whoever's the highest guy, to me it's just Derrick Brown.
Yeah, well, that's what Mike Little agrees too. He says on Facebook, definitely need Derrick Brown as our first pick. So that's the kind of guy, and it sounds like on Facebook at least Mike Little agrees. Yeah. That's the kind of guy you would consider trading up for.
No question, because now you got a guy that can get upfield. He's powerful. He is disruptive. He's massive. He's that kind of guy. He's, a good, and here's the other thing. He's a good locker room guy, good person, nice, all the things. He got that dog in him. But listen, he had great coaching, Rodney Gardner at Auburn. I mean, you can't go wrong with Derrick Brown. When you're talking about surefire pick, I love it. And you put him next to Grady, now he can take on the double teams, but he also is big enough to handle the point. Now you just tell Grady, go ahead and do your thing. Yeah. Do your thing.
Let me get a couple comments here. This is pretty good from Andre Dre Day Ritchie, who says, we need 4 quarterbacks to go in the top 10. So that means our pick is technically the number 12 pick as opposed to the 16th, because Atlanta's not thought of as a quarterback drafting team. That's a pretty good point from Andre there. Tavares Christopher, after I kind of talked down the notion of a trade up, Tavares says Julio was a move up, and it's got a gold jacket written all over. He says try it, in my opinion. So obviously in the Julio Jones case, there was some risk associated with that, but you can't say that Julio Jones hasn't been a good thing to have here in Atlanta. As Tavares, the commenter, said, he's going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and Atlanta almost won a Super Bowl with him and almost got to another with him back in 2012. Let me sell you, though, on a different idea just for a moment. I want you to hear from Thomas Dimitroff on this. So Dimitroff at the Senior Bowl this week, and you can see this video if you go to AJC.com. Get all your Atlanta news now at AJC.com, but this Dimitroff video is there. So he was asked about, hey, you got 3 picks in the top 55, including number 16 overall. Do you think you can get 3 starters out of those top 55 picks, those 3 top 55 picks? And here's what Thomas Dimitroff had to say about that.
Well, we're really hoping that. I mean, we're hoping that we could, have a really productive, a really productive group again, and try to be creative with how we go about it. I mean, I think we're at 55, are we not? In that third pick, I think it came out at 55, which is good for us, of course. So, yes, I think it's a possibility.
So, I mean, I'm going to kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth because at the beginning of the show I said, AJ Epenesa's not all that spectacular to me. I'd rather have something, better than that. But what if Atlanta went not spectacular? What if they said, hey, we're going to drill down on these 3 picks, and we're going to try to find 3 starters? And it may not be, Chase Young lighting the world on fire, but we're going to fill needs, we're going to fill holes, we're going to address our major concerns. Think about how much better Atlanta could be from that. Because if you're moving up, the idea of picking 3 times in the top 55 probably going away at that point in time. You're not doing that anymore.
No, you're not. All right, first thing, I'm looking for a D-line pass rusher. At 16, who's the best pass rusher on our board? And I don't know who that is, right? That's what I'm going at 16, okay? If I can't find that guy at 16, if there's a running back you think that's great, which I don't want personally, they'll probably go that route. But second round, I'm also looking for a pass rusher, or third round, because gosh, think of some of the guys that had a rush this year. As much as we talk about Bosa is that, he's going to be the rookie of the year. But guys, there's a guy who played just as good as Bosa plays for the Raiders, Max Crosby.
Yeah.
He's a 3rd round pick. He's from Eastern Michigan. Great scouting by Mike Mayock and John Gruden. So to me, it's one of those things, I can find pass rushers in the 2nd and 3rd round, right?
Yeah.
But for the Falcons, they're in a good position. What about cornerback? I mean, the Falcons need a cornerback. What about a safety that can make plays? Cornerback is one of the most, listen, the cornerback position is on the rise. It is on the rise because what? Everybody throws. You got to have cornerbacks now that can play man-to-man. The ball's coming out quicker, a lot more pressure, so cornerbacks got to play man-to-man. So if I'm the Falcons, I need a shutdown, lockdown, man-to-man corner if I can find it. Richard Sherman's a dinosaur. San Francisco, those cornerbacks like Richard Sherman, he's a great player, and to me, he's on the borderline Hall of Fame. But the guys who sit back that are average athletes, that are tall, long, but they can't run, they play in coverage, they play in zone, they're gone. Everybody wants long now because you got to have guys that can play man-to-man. You got to. And I think the Falcons in this division also.
Right.
You got to think about that.
Let me get a couple of YouTube comments. Andrew Hamlin says, you hit it on the head with the, quote, thin roster comment. If the player doesn't pan out like Julio, which is probable, we can't afford to move up again because you do create for yourself some holes in other spots. I think Andrew brings a pretty good point on that. Trevon Turner talking about the possibility of, he mentions Justin Bernard out of Florida. 50 million on YouTube also brings up Darrell Taylor out of Tennessee as a possible replacement for Vic Beasley. We're going to talk about the...
I watch a lot of Tennessee. I love Taylor. No.
Okay.
He's a solid guy, but he's not a replacement for Vic Beasley. He's not. I mean, he's not that kind of player.
Well, let's talk free agency here for a moment because this week, Thomas Dimitroff, Falcons GM, had some interesting things to say about that. And I want to get into the Austin Hooper thing as well. So it's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. We'll talk about Hooper coming up. We'll talk about all those. Let me also remind you that if you want to get up-to-date coverage on how the Falcons are getting ready for the draft and what's going to happen in free agency, can you afford to bring back Austin Hooper? Can you afford to bring back Vic Beasley? Can you afford to bring back Beasley Campbell? The best way to do that is make sure you're an AJC subscriber. You get the up-to-the-minute news as it happens, the most in-depth analysis of your Falcons from D. Orlando Ledbetter, the entire team there at the AJC. Go to this website, subscribe.ajc.com/FalconsNewsNow. Subscribe.ajc.com/FalconsNewsNow. You can choose from a variety of options. The daily e-paper sent right to your device, or the e-paper plus Sunday home delivery, or maybe you want 7-day home delivery. Lots of different options for you to choose from. No matter which one you select, as a special thank you, this complimentary, officially branded Falcons cooler. You know, the AJC is a proud partner of the Atlanta Falcons, and this is one of the ways we show that off. We'd love to make one a gift to you, but you've got to go to the website, subscribe.ajc.com/FalconsNewsNow. Falcons news now. All right, so let's get into free agency just for a moment because we did a lot of draft stuff, but one of the more interesting scenarios with Atlanta kind of sort of sits with, what are you going to do with a lot of these free agents? Let me start with Austin Hooper, then we'll get to Campbell some more, and we'll get to Vic Beasley before we're done. Very interesting comment from Austin Hooper in Orlando for the Pro Bowl. He was caught up with Caleb Johnson from 92.9 The Game, a sports radio station in Atlanta, caught up with Hooper on the subject of his pending free agency, what's going on here. Apparently things are moving very slow because, as Hooper told 92.9 The Game, he really hasn't had much contact with Atlanta yet at all. Here's what the Falcons tight end had to say about that.
My whole attitude is it'll happen the way it's supposed to. I mean, I did my part, ended up here at the Pro Bowl, so if the organization wants me, they'll offer me. I still haven't received an offer from them. So if and when they're ready, they know who to hit, and I'll let the representation of the Falcons handle it. But as of now, I'm just enjoying what could be my last game as a Falcon down here at the Pro Bowl. So I'm just trying to represent the organization the best way possible and, uphold, myself to a high standard and make sure, I conduct myself in the right way, represent those fans of Atlanta, the upper brass in Atlanta, coaches, everybody, just letting everybody know what I'm all about.
So once again, that comes from 92.9 The Game, the sports radio station in Atlanta, catching up with Hooper in Orlando for the Pro Bowl. Hooper there because George Kittle is going to play in the Super Bowl. To me, this comes across as sort of typical posturing. Atlanta moving slow. Obviously, the side that wants it least always wins every negotiation. So Atlanta trying to show they've got upper hand here. They want it least. They're going to move slow with that contract offer for Hooper. I don't take much of this one way or another in terms of Atlanta's desire to re-sign Hooper. If they wanted him really badly, I think they'd still be behaving this way. They're trying to get the upper hand in the negotiations. You mentioned before, you've been an NFL free agent. So how do you read this situation right now?
Well, I kind of read it what Hoop did a little bit, playing a little gamesmanship. Think about what he came out and said. He said the first thing is, I'm at my second Pro Bowl. I've done what I needed to do.
That's a good
Basically
quote.
saying, Falcons, I'm a Pro Bowler.
Right.
Y'all drafted me. Now I'm doing what? I'm at the Pro Bowl again. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if this is going to be my last game. Here's another quote. I don't know if this is going to be my last game in the Falcons uniform at the Pro Bowl. So somewhat that is saying, you know what, Falcons? I kind of already know that, there's could be some, issues here going down the line. But I like the fact that he showed a little hot sauce, threw a little something in there, a little sting that it's a subliminal message that he's sending to the Falcons that, hey, I'm not going to sit here and just take whatever, no hometown discount, but I'm going to, figure it out. But, I was a free agent too one time. Yeah. And it's behind closed doors, dude is absolutely celebrating. He's chilling. I'm just telling you. He's celebrating. He's going to get paid. He's going to get paid. Listen, Austin Hooper, if he got on the free agent market, he'd be one of the hottest free agent commodities in the entire league. 20-plus teams that want him. He's a two-time Pro Bowler. Yeah. He's young. Right. The guy is young.
Well, I think his quote there is well said, too, because
he's young.
His game speaks for itself. And the one thing that he's not going to say there, but he very well could, hey, I'm one of the few success stories from a personnel standpoint Atlanta can point to over the last couple of years. Kind of thrived in his rookie year back in 2016 in Kyle Shanahan's offense, but kind of maintain that in the post-Shanahan era, something that a lot of other Falcons players were not able to say they could do. Much the same way you look at Grady Jarrett as one of these guys Atlanta found that turned into a really good player. This is what Hooper is. And I think he would be very fair in saying, you really want to move on from me based on your recent draft history? You think you're going to draft someone to replace what I've been able to do now, be a Pro Bowler at this tight end position? I think that Hooper playing it cool is just as justifiable as Atlanta trying to play it cool with having not yet offered him yet. I think that both sides are justified in trying to have kind of an aggressive negotiation because as much as I've said, I think Atlanta has to re-sign Hooper, I don't think you lead with your chin. The way that Arthur Blank has before said, Julio Jones will be a Falcon for life. You've cut off your contract negotiations at the knees when you're the one that kind of already proclaims that. You got to maintain a certain degree of leverage. So I don't mind either side in this case trying to do that.
Yeah, and I understand that. But here's my thing about Hooper and what leverage. Here's another part that people truly need to understand. This is the best era since I'd say the 80s and 70s for tight ends. In the 90s, tight ends started fading. And from 2000 to 2010, they've almost been nothing. So now from 2010 to, let's just say 13, now you start getting all these guys, all these great receiving tight ends. This is the best era because everybody's throwing the ball. The RPOs, one of the number one option on those RPOs a lot of times the tight end.
Yeah.
You got tight ends that are running reverses.
They're easy to find. They're big targets.
They are weapons. You got tight ends that are lined up as fullbacks. You got tight ends, that are just taking the ball in shotgun. You know what I mean? They're running like power plays. This is the best era. Hooper hit a home run. Look at Kittles.
Yeah.
Look at the guys from Kansas City. I mean, we can go around the board. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, he has all the leverage. Really, listen, he has as much leverage, you can't have more. He has 100% leverage over the Falcons because you got to sign him. If you don't sign him, number one, you develop him. What a terrible situation you develop. And then it'd be something crazy now you see him pop up in your division.
That would not be good. That would not be good. Let me read you this quote. Thomas Dimitroff, D. Orlando Ledbetter of the AJC has this. On the subject of Hooper, someone mentioned Vic Beasley in our comment section before, Devondre Campbell, the other really big sort of high-profile free agent. Dimitroff says, I don't know if we can get them all back. You can read this at AJC.com. I'm not sure again. We are not exactly sure what direction we're going to go with that. So that's Dimitroff is quoted from the Senior Bowl this week at AJC.com. When Jesse was here this past Friday, I said, for me, Beasley is someone that I wouldn't consider bringing back unless it was just really, really cheap. I wouldn't even pretend to be considering this. I'd move on from Big Beasley. I'm not going to read a whole bunch into some sacks and what was essentially a meaningless part of the second half of the year. I'd move on from Beasley with all due respect. Devondre Campbell for me is I'd be interested in re-signing him, but that is also a player I feel like I can live with that. If I have to, Campbell is not a must-have for me.
Yeah.
But Hooper, even as expensive he's going to be, is the must-have. So to once again repeat, Hooper's a sign at all costs. Campbell is a
maybe.
I could also do without. Beasley, I'd shake his hand right now and wish him well.
I told you guys that DQ was coming back. You didn't want to hear it. But let me tell you the Vic Beasley story. Dan Quinn, in the second half of the season, came up with schemes and made a few changes in Vic Beasley, and all of a sudden Vic went on the run to get 8. So how people are evaluating Vic Beasley, Dan is evaluating what. So the last they seen, Vic was using moves. Vic was, getting to the ball. Vic was getting sacks. I believe Vic Beasley's going to come back. I believe Vic Beasley's going to come back. I think it's a great shot. I definitely think they're going to try to make it work, you know what I'm saying, for them. But I think when you look at the team, yeah, we're talking about drafting one pass rusher from Iowa. Heck, they need 2. They need 3. Listen, you can't have enough pass rushers. Think about Frisco.
Yeah.
Frisco got so many pass rushers to make your head spin. So, to me, you almost had to bring Vic back unless you're going to go in free agency. Remember, we ain't got enough money.
Right.
So, it's tough, man. I can see Vic Beasley coming back because, remember, that's Q developed this. This is his draft pick. And their draft pick, now they're looking at it like, wow, we've changed some stuff. So you got to remember, I'm telling you, I don't believe, not speaking for them, that they're looking at what happened the year before, even the year before that. Now, when you look at Vic Beasley, the potential and the possibility is like, whoa, he had 8. Maybe next year it'll be 10.
It's AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, just 96 calories. You're getting together to watch the big game next Sunday. Miller Lite is certainly a great choice for your big game watching party next week. I want to do, speaking of something on the Super Bowl, I want to do something on the Super Bowl here in a minute. Let me do a few of your comments before we get there. Obviously, a lot on free agency and the draft stuff kind of coming in here. JB Brumfeld keeps saying in the YouTube comment section, Kinlaw. I don't think you're going to have a chance to draft Kinlaw. I just don't think you're going to. I just don't think he's going to be there.
I think it's going to be tough because especially after what he did at the Senior Bowl, what he's doing at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's big, strong, and he'd be a nice fit there. He's raw, though.
Trevon Turner asked a good question. Going back to our topic to start the show on AJ Epinesa. He says, AJ is just okay. He says, you really going to use your first pick for an okay player? The only way in which I'd be okay, to use your phrase, with an okay player with your first overall pick, if I was the Falcons, if you also told me I can get a starter with both my second round picks. If that be the case, then you don't need either one of those guys to be all that spectacular. You just need for them to be solid, and you just need for them to be better than what you have. But ultimately, kind of in that halfway point of the first round, your imagination does sort of go to better player than just solid starter. You at least think about it that way, so I understand where you're coming from. But if you could pair that with two other solid guys in the second round, at that point in time, hard not to say Atlanta's had itself a pretty good draft. But I sort of get the lack of enthusiasm about an A.J. Epinesa pick.
I don't want to hear that when he's going to be playing D tackle. We need an edge guy. You need straight edge. Grady right now, when it comes to nickel, he's able to rush and be disruptive. We're solid in the middle. But the Falcons now, when you look at this, there's a lot of evaluating going. I ain't trying to be a negative Nancy for our fans. I know people like to play the game, but listen, so I can give you the process. You got advanced scouting that's already been done. Now you're going, all the scouts are going to get together. So think about this. This is the first time Dan Quinn and all the coaches, whether it's Mike Tomlin, they've had a chance to even see the players. Dan and them ain't been studying no film. They just started that when their seasons get over. You know what I mean? So they don't, I can just tell you this right now. Anthony Lynn in San Diego don't know much about Swift. Mm-hmm. They haven't been studying film. They've been fighting for their lives through the NFL season.
Fair enough.
So the people that are going to make decisions, they're going to make the decisions. Now you got, like I said, all the scouts, they got to get together. They got meetings the whole nine. And listen, if the Falcons draft, a kid from Iowa, I'd be surprised because usually what you think they're going to get, they ain't going to get.
Let me get a couple more comments on Hooper. Mr. CDXX for Life says, buy Hooper. I will admit, there are more Falcons fans kind of on the fence about re-signing Hooper than I would have realized. I agree with Anthony Jones, though, who says, I understand the many needs we have, but if we let Hooper go, we are clearly already going backward for 2020. And he puts clearly again in all caps. And this is true. To me, if I'm a Falcon fan, it's demoralizing to think that by letting Hooper walk, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're going to spend most of the offseason working just to get back to where you were a year ago, which was only a 7-9 season. The idea that you would go backwards at the start of free agency by relinquishing Hooper to somebody else, I don't know how you could afford to go backwards to this position, just given the fact that it's going to take everything you can just to inch forward a little bit.
Hooper's a flat-out baller. I'm going by what I see every week. Until Hoop got injured, man, Hooper makes catches. And think about this. Hooper will be better. This is one thing right now we're having the struggles with us Falcon fans is this. We evaluate our offensive line, but we struggle at, everybody says there's some struggles with the play calling, right? We wonder why our running game ain't there, but then we have issues with our offensive line. You got to assume that this Falcons team is going to get better. You got to figure Dirk Cutter's going to start calling better plays, or at least they're going to execute them better because we're not in the meeting rooms to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. The team's going to get better. The defense is going to make stops. So you got to trust that your organization's doing the right things and that Hooper's going to get better. Because, look, the team was absolutely – listen, the first 7 games, the offense was absolutely a mess. It was a disaster. Then what? Hooper was consistently making plays. He was the one. He was making plays. Even when Julio had 5-6 games and had no touchdowns, Hooper's going to get better also when the offense gets better. We get a better running game, there's better play action pass. So all those things come into account because I'm telling you, he's a baller. You watch him, I'll watch him. And unless you're seeing something I don't see, he was as good as anybody in the league when he was healthy.
Let me read 3 straight comments on Facebook, though. Hold on, let me get these. Because these are very, very interesting. Dre Duncan says, Hooper deserves his money, but he can go somewhere else. We have Ridley and Jones. Don't really need a dominant tight end. Get a good pass rush, Dre says. P.J. Johnson Jr. says, Hooper's a check down tight end. Doesn't control the middle of the field or is a threat. Hooper is a product of being with Julio and Ridley. And then Dan Blackshear says, Hooper ain't winning no games for us. Chuck, I really can't believe this. And, listen, I'm kind of a man of the people. I want the people to have their say. And ultimately, what they want, I guess more important than anything to me, I can't believe that Hooper's not getting more love than this from the people in the comment. I can't believe that he's not getting more love than that.
Well, I can understand it because the same folks who are saying that sitting here and whine and cry about the offensive line. How does Hooper get the ball in the middle if the quarterback ain't got no time? How does the play action pass work? I'm just kicking, just being real. You tell me. And I respect your opinion. But give me an answer. How does Hooper do his job? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When everybody else is struggling. You know what I mean? So ultimately, when you look at his production, look at the things he does, because let's remember, there was almost 5-6 years forever it seemed like, man, we need a tight end. We need a tight end. We need a tight end. Matt needs a tight end to go-to guy, right? because after Tony Gonzalez, Algie, all those guys that we had, people were saying that. For years, we had no tight end. We had the big, what's the big kid, plays with San Fran?
Levine Toilolo.
So I don't know, man. Again, I just think he's a product, he's a successful product of an offense that has went through a couple coordinators. So again, how do you thrive? There's so many intangibles that affect Matt, that affects the offensive line, it definitely affects Hooper.
Toddy Jones says, we love Hoop, but the salary cap is real. And I understand where Toddy's coming from on that. My prediction would be that if you didn't have Hooper, that I'm not saying Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley's productivity is going to disappear, but for both these guys, if you're not worried about a big-time pass-catching tight end, it becomes a lot easier to defend Julio Jones. It becomes a lot easier to defend Calvin Ridley. And obviously in a couple of years, as Toddy also mentioned, you're going to have to pay Calvin Ridley his money. At that point in time, you can let anybody walk you want to, because at that point in time, you got to re-sign Ridley. But for now, I think getting the best out of Ridley, getting the best out of Julio Jones, means you have to have another threat that really draws the attention of defenders. If you don't, they'll just bracket Julio and do something similar to Calvin Ridley and essentially put those guys in handcuffs.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know in the first couple again, Julio went 5-6 games again this year without a touchdown?
Yeah.
Hooper was scoring touchdowns. He was in the red zone. He was making some plays. But again, I'm just big on, man, in Falcons history. Everybody whines and cries about not developing guys. You develop a 2-time Pro Bowl tight end. Then you beat him up because you say he can't run in the middle. Now go look at the top teams in the league. What do they have? I'm good with emulating. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm emulating.
Now, Danny Johnson brings up a fair point. Russell Gage is also a guy that after the Sanu trade, Gage probably really emerged, and you need more guys like that. For me, though, that does not diminish the value of Austin Hooper, but it is fair to point out, and, I've seen kind of this with other Falcons fans too, but in our comment section, it's tough for Atlanta to have to really pony up and pay up big for a guy that won't even be celebrated as a huge win when he re-signs. Like if you're Thomas Dimitroff or if you're Rich McKay or Arthur Blank, maybe thinking about the big picture business part of all of this, it'd be a lot easier from a salary cap standpoint if you did just move on. But when you bring back a guy who's produced, you hope that fans are going to celebrate this as a big win for the organization. A lot of folks in our comment section are not going to be doing that, which is if you're Falcons brass and you kind of look in on that, I'm not quite sure how you're supposed to respond to all that.
Man, who cares about all that marketing? You know what? See, this is one of the mindset, let's be real, the New England Patriots type of folk. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We win a Super Bowl, guess what? You're going to be
enough.
happy. You're going to celebrate. So remember, Hooper's one piece of a big puzzle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And real quick, let me say something else too. About the defense. Now, we're talking about we need all these pieces. We've been drafting defense for years. So at some point, like you said, guys what's Oliver? It's time to step up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So all these guys, Deidre's not, get them off the pine. So those are some of the things that, to me, that need to be looked at on the defensive end. But Hooper, man, he's a flat-out baller. And for you to say Russell Gage is going to step up and fill Hooper, already a 2-time Pro Bowler, I mean, to me, that's absolutely ludicrous for you to even put Gage. How many catches did he have? How many games did he even start? Come on now.
He did play better once the Sanu trade happened.
Again, come on, man. Again.
All right, speaking of ludicrous, I think this is ludicrous. You can read the story at AJC.com. Obviously, the 49ers getting ready for the Super Bowl, and the subject of Kyle Shanahan's last trip to the Super Bowl has come up. The decision not to run the ball late that seemingly could have iced the game for Atlanta and preserved a Lombardi trophy for the Falcons. Shanahan at the center of that decision. He's never really been all that contrite for his role in that epic coaching failure, and frankly, Dan Quinn has kind of sidestepped some of that too, but it's Shanahan for now that's in the crosshairs. Let me show you the quote from AJC.com, and this kind of comes in preparation for the Super Bowl. This drives me insane. Here's Kyle Shanahan on that. He says, losing a Super Bowl is extremely tough for everybody, especially when you lose one you have a 28-3 lead. The way it came down on me personally, I didn't react to that the way people would expect, because there were definitely parts in that Super Bowl that I would love to have back and stuff if I was really hard on myself. But the whole narrative of if I had just ran it, we would have won, I know that wasn't the case.
Denial.
What's he talking about right there?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like that for Falcons fans, one of the most frustrating parts of all of this is that the people involved just won't admit that it's one of the great choke jobs of all time. a totally avoidable failure, a completely unforced error, and the fact that Shanahan dusted it off, as he said, hey, it didn't bother me as bad as some people think it might have. He was bolting on his way out the door to become a head coach right after that was over with. It'll never happen. You'll never get him to talk about it. You'll never get him to face the facts on this. But Falcons fans who've lived and died with this team for decades, they deserve more from their offensive coordinator than that. I got a job. What am I worried about? I became a head coach after that. What am I worried about? I'm back in the Super Bowl now. Yeah, but what about the team that you let down? I'll say it that way. What about the team that you let down with your poor play calling there at the end? And you know I'm a Shanahan guy. I think Shanahan's a brilliant coach. But he had an awful blunder.
Yeah.
For him to act like it's no big deal and he doesn't care, that's going to drive you crazy.
I think he just covered it up. I think he smothered it so it won't go any further. Mm-hmm. So if he says, yeah, man, I regret it. I apologize what happened. So now you're adding a whole nother, storyline to the Super Bowl. I get it. He made a terrible mistake. And because I remember sitting there watching, I was at home. And when it happened, I was like, oh, yeah, run the ball. And it was natural. When I'm doing literally situational football. I said, run the ball. And when he didn't run the ball, it was natural. I mean, this is when you know something was wrong for me and my son sitting in there. And it was absolutely unbelievable. And
it's fair to say that, maybe you don't convert running plays. Maybe Matt Bryant misses a 40-yard field goal, whatever it would have been. Maybe all that goes down. I mean, it's obviously not a guarantee that anything happens the way you think it's going to. But there's not a human being alive who's ever watched 5 seconds of football that wouldn't say in that spot, Shanahan's got a very simple solution. Just run the football. Stop being so cute. Stop proving how smart you are. And I think of Shanahan as, I think he's a brilliant coach. And ultimately, Atlanta doesn't get to the Super Bowl without him, so his failure in the moment is probably not as significant for me as the brilliance that he showed along the way. As we said earlier, they're 30-something points a game that year.
Yeah.
Huge. Matt Ryan's never been better than he was under the tutelage of Kyle Shanahan. But that comes across as just arrogance right there, just gross arrogance.
It does, but let me tell you something else too. Me not trying to defend Kyle Shanahan. Man, there were so many mistakes in that game by so many people. They're lucky he don't throw them under the bus. So when you think about it, think about what happened on the defensive end. Think of what happened to some of the, across the board. Yeah. So when you look at it, I mean, like, they didn't do anything on the defensive end. The second half, there were blocks that weren't made. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? So
not to bring up a tough subject, but you obviously lost the Super Bowl, and your Super Bowl had its own set of circumstances because of what happened to Eugene Robinson. My guess is, though, as a competitor like you, and to this day, you're still an intense competitor. You go after everything with a real intensity. Mm-hmm. How many times do you kind of lay awake at night thinking about if this play goes different, that play goes different? All of a sudden, I'm that guy with that Lombardi trophy in my hand. I'm not just a Super Bowl participant, but I'm a Super Bowl winner.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself living with some of those moments even still?
I think the only time I find myself living is when I see somebody who has the ring. I got friends, Steve Atwater. Mm-hmm.
One of the all-time greats.
Yeah, Steve Atwater. I'll see Tony Jones, who I went against in the Super Bowl. Even I'm cool with Richard Seymour. He'll got his 3 rings in his house, and I'm like, dang. I could, how close you were to get there because it's not guaranteed. Even like Shannon Sharp, you'll see guys, they'll be clowning, cracking jokes, you know what I mean? But then
Shannon Sharp strikes me as someone who would talk a lot about having a Super Bowl.
So, right. So that's the only time. But as far as sitting up at night, not worrying about the plays, I think in that Super Bowl, we didn't, defensively play all that well. Mm. You know what I mean? So, heck,
that's also
they put it on us.
That Denver offense.
They put it on us. So I'm not one of them guys say, hey, man, look. Elway, Davis, they put it on us, man. I didn't have a good game, but it's like that sometimes.
Yeah, no, it is. Certainly. Hey, we're out of time. I don't have a ton of time to get into this, but make sure you check out AJC.com. Tim Tucker, very in-depth reporting on a tough situation involving the Atlanta Falcons PSLs and a good number of defaults on those. As, you hate it for Falcons ticket buyers. They've kind of found that price tag to end up being somewhat onerous. The Atlanta Falcons themselves, they're trying to run their business. They're trying to succeed, and kind of ushering in a new stadium is a part of that. Kind of a tough situation that both sides are kind of dealing with. The fans themselves, the Falcons as well. But really good reporting from Tim Tucker at the AJC, AJC.com. You can read the story about this. At this point in time, I'm not quite sure how you solve that problem if you're Atlanta. I think that Tim does a good job of kind of laying out what it is, but it would certainly seem like in a lot of ways that PSL experiment, funding Mercedes-Benz Stadium that way, or just using that as a revenue stream for the Falcons doesn't seem like it's really working.
No, it's not, and it didn't help for the 28-3. The Falcons win that Super Bowl, that sucker sold out, that stadium. But I think also has to do with, to me, really, it's a transplant city. That international thing we hear, oh, this is and no one's from Atlanta. But I think the core people, because I remember where my seats were, them same people who tried to move in the same seats when I was at Falcons season ticket holder, they not in there.
Yeah.
So now instead of having 4 seats, like the whole family buys 1 seat, and I totally respect that. But the core Atlanta fans, that's from Decatur, College Park, all those places, to me, they wanted to get in, but a lot of them can't.
Yeah.
But now you got these corporations, people just ain't coming. But ultimately, I don't know, because people own them seats, they're just not coming. I mean, there's money invested in the seats.
Right.
People don't come. It's perplexing.
You know, it's not an Atlanta-only story. Almost every franchise in all sports have kind of moved into a state-of-the-art stadium, kind of dealt with some version of this. I agree with Chuck's larger point that winning likely cures a lot of these kinds of problems. But in terms of the full breadth of the problem, Tim Tucker, pretty good reporting on that at AJC.com. You can check that out. We'll be back on Monday. Some people ask, where are you guys this past Monday? It was the MLK holiday. We were off in observance of that. It was a corporate holiday for us here where we're located. We will be back on Monday looking at the Super Bowl, plenty more on the Falcons draft and free agency, so we'll see you then. It's AJC, Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Y'all enjoy the weekend, and we'll be back here on Monday to talk more Falcons with you then. We'll look forward to speaking to you at that time.